Okay, so now we're going to be looking at some of the somatic sensory pathways. Okay, so again, remind yourself what somatic sensations are. Keep in mind too that sensations are going to be starting out in the periphery and moving in towards the central nervous system, in towards the spinal cord and the brain. Okay. Now it turns out we're going to have three neurons, 2 or 3 neurons that are going to tag team to get us from the periphery up to the area of the brain where the sensation is ultimately going to be processed. Okay. And so we're going to call those 3 neurons first order, second order, and third order neurons. Okay. Now here in your book on page 520 are really some great figures that are going to help you process this information. Okay. Now the first kind we're going to talk about are here in the spinothalamic pathway. Now I would suggest breaking this word down. Spino means it's coming from the spine and then up through the thalamus. Okay, and it's going to take 3 neurons to get there. So let's look at this figure. Okay, so first thing you should know, these are the types of sensations. Okay, we're going to have 2 different tracks that are part of the spinothalamic pathway. Okay, so what we have, the first thing we have is this red line, and this is our first order neuron. It is the first neuron to experience the sensation. And so here it comes in, and note anytime you see this little dot, that's the cell body. So it starts out in the periphery. Say if you get some sort of push on your hand, okay, that's going to start out in the periphery, and a neuron brings it into the spinal cord, okay, but its cell body sits in this dorsal root ganglion. Then it's going to hand it off to the next neuron, which is the white line here, called the second order neuron. It is the second neuron to experience the stimulus. Notice its cell body is right here in the posterior gray horn. Okay, and notice too that at the spinal cord is the level where we get decussation. All right, and to remind you, decussation is going to be where you cross from one side of the spinal cord to the other. Okay. So here we get decussation, and then it is going to travel up this elevator, up to the brain. This elevator, this track up through the white matter, is called the anterior spinothalamic tract. Okay. And we notice this second order neuron ends at the thalamus. Okay. Now if you remember, the thalamus is a filter, so it's going to let some sensations go on through to conscious perception, and other sensations we never become aware of, and those will stop right here in the thalamus. If they go on to our consciousness, they will go up here to the primary sensory cortex. I believe your lab manual calls it the primary somatosensory cortex. Same thing. Okay, and so notice that it hands it off to this black line. That's the third order neuron. It's the third neuron to experience the sensation. Notice its cell body is in the thalamus, and the signal ends in that primary somatosensory cortex. Okay. Now, again, this is the spinothalamic pathway. There are 2 different tracks you can take, which means 2 different elevators up the white columns. The anterior spinothalamic tract is going to take crude touch and pressure, and the lateral spinothalamic tract is going to take pain and temperature sensations. Notice if you're sensing something on the right side of the body, it will cross over to the left side of the spinal cord and the left side of the brain. Okay, now another pathway is going to be the posterior column pathway. Okay. Now again, we're going to have 3 neurons. The sensations felt are fine touch, vibration, pressure, proprioception. Okay. And this would come in here, first order neuron in red, cell body in the dorsal root ganglion. Okay. And it's going to actually go up on the same side of the body, up this tract called the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. So it goes up here until you get to the medulla oblongata. And at this point, you get decussation. Then it keeps going up a tract called the medial lemniscus. And again, it's going to end in the thalamus. Okay? So we hand off in the medulla oblongata to a second order neuron, and the second order neuron is what is going to experience decussation. Second order neuron ends into the thalamus, and again, if we're going to conscious perception, we have a third order neuron take it to the primary somatosensory cortex. Okay? So again, think about what is similar, what is different. Differences are points of decussation. Here is the medulla oblongata, whereas for the spinothalamic pathways, we have decussation at the spinal cord level. The other differences are going to be the types of sensations that are felt. Okay. Finally, the last one that we have is going to be the spinocerebellar pathway. Okay. Again, let me move this over here. We're going to have proprioception is the main input that's coming in. Okay. Now this one is kind of unique because some of the signal will experience decussation, but some of the signal will not. It'll go up the same side. So this left cerebellum is receiving proprioceptive information from both the right and left side of the body. So we get decussation, if it happens, is going to happen in the spinal cord, and the tracks it goes up are the anterior and posterior spinocerebellar tract. So it tells you it's going from the spine up to the cerebellum just by the name. And so in your notes packets, you should think about for each of these neurons where the signal begins. So for a first order neuron in all of these signals, it is going to begin in the periphery where the receptors are. Okay, where does the neuron take the signal? Well, it is going to take it, and if we look back at these images, the first order neuron is always going to be the red one here, and it is going to take it either to the spinal cord, here it also goes to the spinal cord, the posterior gray horn, or for the case of this pathway, the posterior column pathway, it's actually going to take it all the way up to the medulla oblongata. Okay. So where this neuron takes it, either the spinal cord, posterior gray horns, or the medulla oblongata. Okay, and the location of the neuron cell body, well again, if we look in every single case, this little circle is always in the dorsal root ganglion. So that would be the location, dorsal root ganglion. So that would be the location of that cell body. Okay. So I would suggest you go through and do that for the second order and third order neurons. And again, I just want to point out that to have a conscious perception of a sensation, a somatic sensation, it must come to the primary sensory cortex. If it stops at the thalamus, we do not consciously perceive it even though it's happening. And the cerebellum is also not a part of our conscious perception. And so if it goes there, we also don't consciously perceive it.